Discover 3 sinister and spine-chilling true stories revealing the unexplained horrors of midnight. Sarah was deep in thought, calculating her next bills after another long shift at the hospital, when her phone rang. "Something's not right, Sarah," her neighbor's voice quivered through the line. "I heard strange noises coming from your backyard." A shiver gripped her spine. Could her sanctuary be invaded by the unknown? Millwood was supposed to be safe. The kids were sleeping, but a sense of foreboding enveloped her. Heart racing, she peered through the window, expecting the familiar streetlight glow, but the night was an inky black. As she returned to her worries, flickering lights broke through her drawn curtains. They pulsed as if something ancient and sinister had awakened, sending chills crawling across her skin. Footsteps echoed faintly, icy whispers flitting past like restless shadows. "It's just the wind," she told herself, but the tension gnawed at her. Each creak of the old house felt like fingers scratching at the walls, begging to be let inside. The ticking clock mocked her, each sound a reminder of the encroaching terror that wrapped around her home like a tightly coiled serpent that a sudden draft pushed against her, and she caught a glimpse of condensation creeping along her living room window. The words, "I see you," formed ominously in the mist. Panic surged within her. Who was watching? Who could cross the line from friendly neighbor to lurking predator? She dialed the local police, but their dismissive tones cut deeper than any phantom lurking in the dark. "We'll send an officer, but it's probably just your imagination." This was Millwood, after all, a family haven, where night was supposed to mean quiet and calm. In a quest for security, she turned to her neighbors, but even their smiles felt like masks hiding something sinister underneath. Whispers of a beloved teacher at Emma's school who had won the townsfolk's hearts began to echo in her mind. Stories of authority cloaked in affection made her stomach twist. Could he hide behind their smiles? As she pieced together this web of secrets, it became clear, she wasn't just fighting an unseen enemy, she was battling a nightmare breathing beneath Millwood's skin. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With dread tightening around her heart, Sarah forced herself to take action. Shadows closed in as she stepped outside, senses heightened. Her once comforting streets felt foreign, echoes of laughter twisted into something sinister. She ventured toward places abandoned or forgotten, where the living met the remnants of dread, and fears of the past floated on the wind. Every tick of the clock grew louder, stalked by a threat that loomed dangerously close. Would she uncover the truth before it consumed them all? Would Millwood's darkness devour the light she fought so hard to protect? The air felt thick, a suffocating weight pressing down on Sarah as she stepped into the darkness. Her heart pounded in rhythm with her footsteps, reverberating against the silent echo of the empty street. The shadows seemed to dance, swirling about, anticipating her every move. She paused outside her neighbor's house, the one whose voice had warned her. The lights inside flickered, casting eerie shadows that distorted the comforting familiarity of its walls. She felt a compelling urge to knock, to demand he explain what he had heard, but something held her back, a gnawing instinct warning her against opening that door. Instincts heightened, Sarah scanned her surroundings. Each rustle in the bushes made her muscles tense. She approached the backyard, the gateway to a world she once thought harmless. What awaited her in the depths of her yard? The moon hung low, illuminating the path with a pallid glow, just enough to reveal shapes but not truths. "Stay calm," she whispered, her voice trembling. But as she moved closer to the looming shadow of the oak tree, a figure caught her eye. A silhouette stood still, just beyond the edges of the light. Its outline bore an uncanny resemblance to someone she recognized, a lonely familiar lost to the abyss. It was her neighbor, but the sight was disjointed, the form twisted in a strange manner that sent a chill down her spine. "Is that you, Greg?" She called out. No response. Only the stillness of the night. The figure remained for what felt like an eternity, then melted into the darkness. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat as she hurried back towards the house, the feeling of being hunted gnawing at her. Inside, the house felt foreign. The shadows loomed larger, and the familiar creaks and groans of the walls seemed to echo warnings. She bolted the door, breathing heavily as she leaned against it, the solid barrier no longer reassuring. She knew now a predator lurked outside, but they weren't the only beasts scuttling in the shadows. Her phone buzzed loudly, jerking her from her thoughts. A text from her husband, Michael, lit up the screen, more of a lifeline than a message. Are the kids okay? The text read simply, but it was all it took to send her spiraling into a fresh wave of anxiety. They were downstairs, blissfully unaware of the world unraveling around them, but the memories of each bedtime story, laughter, and cries echoed through her mind like haunting banshees. Suddenly, a loud thud from the back door jolted Sarah upright, shattering her fragile moment of calm. She turned to face the kitchen, where the dim light cast long shadows. Fear gripped her heart as she rushed to the living room. Should she gather the kids? Should they flee? But what if the threat lay just outside their door? The knocking began again, insistent and unyielding. Each unsuccessful attempt held a note of urgency, a demand cloaked in malice. The people who used to whisper sweet nothings that curled like smoke now infused dread into the air. Mommy, Emma's voice called softly from the staircase, a plea laced with confusion. Stay upstairs. Sarah shouted, her voice breaking. But deep down, she knew she had to protect them. The darkness outside felt alive, thumping against the door as if it pushed to sneak in and steal them. The world, Millwood appeared tranquil, homes nestled side by side, but within those walls lurked more than just shadows. Sarah turned, knowing she had to confront whatever the night had in store for her. Every instinct screamed to run, but she took a step toward the door, her heart urging her on. What waited on the other side could shatter everything she held dear. Then, the door lurched open with a violent crash. And there stood someone she never expected to see, a face that made her blood run cold. What had been hidden all along? The door swung wide open, a gust of chilling wind sweeping into the house. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. There, illuminated by the moonlight pouring in, stood Greg, but he wasn't the friendly neighbor she remembered. His eyes were hollow, sunken deep into his face, which was smeared with dirt and something darker that glistened like wet ink. He grinned, a wide, grotesque smile that revealed too many teeth, each one sharp and unsettling. What happened to you? Sarah stammered, her heart pounding loudly, drowning out the sound of the wind. Sarah, Greg rasped, his voice raspy and drawn out like dried leaves in the wind. I tried to warn you. You shouldn't have come back here. The words dripped with a sinister undertone, each syllable crawling under her skin. She flinched, instinctively stepping back, but Greg's gaze held her captive. The shadows behind him moved, undulating like serpents, coiling and slithering around the boundaries of the doorway. Get back! She yelled, clenching her fists. Her mind raced, projecting images of safety for her children upstairs. What do you want? But instead of answering, he pointed behind her, his finger trembling. You'll never be safe here. They're coming for you. They're already inside. She spun around, panic rising like bile in her throat. The house felt malleable, twisting in ways she couldn't comprehend. The shadows, once harmless, seeped into the corners of her vision, stretching into dark hands that clawed at her sense of reality. Mommy! Emma's voice echoed from the second floor, a pleading wail that pulled at Sarah's heart. She had to get to them but feared leaving Greg unchecked. You need to leave. He stepped forward, his face twisted in anguish. They'll take them all. You don't understand what you're dealing with. A heavy thump echoed down the hallway, sending a quiver of dread through her. The sound resonated from the basement door, a sinister invitation that made the hair on her arms stand tall. Stay away from her. She scolded, but Greg stepped closer, his smile faltering, revealing something deeper, not just fear, but a twisted desperation. "Sarah, please," Greg's tone softened, eyes glimmering with a strange light. "I can show you how to protect them. You need to trust me." Trust? The word felt foreign, a dusty relic in a runaway train of chaos. She could feel the tension crackling in the air, pulsating through her skin. The knocking had stopped, but it felt like the calm before a calamity. Something was building, something dark and unyielding. Suddenly, the basement door slammed open, a rush of icy air cascading through the hall, and a shadow emerged. It was a figure, tall and distorted, prowling with a haunting grace. Its presence washed the room in a deafening silence, pressing down like a lead weight, squeezing the warmth from the light. "Run!" Greg roared, his expression twisting with panic. He lunged toward the figure, but it was too late. Sarah turned and bolted toward the staircase, her heart racing faster than her legs could carry her. She could hear the wretched sound of breath behind her, closing in like a storm. Damned if she looked back. "Sarah!" Greg's yell echoed, filled with terror, caught in a struggle with the advancing figure. Each step felt heavier than the last, reality spun wildly. What could she do? Could she reach Emma in time? Shadows flickered at her heels, creeping closer. As she reached the top of the stairs, a sharp cry ripped through the air. "Mommy!" And just then, the lights flickered again, plunging the house into utter darkness. What now awaited her, hidden within that veil of shadows? Would it consume her? The last breath she took echoed in her mind. Would it? A slow, dragging noise crawled up the hallway, and she was left wondering who or what would finally claim her breath. The darkness swallowed her whole, a suffocating blanket that pressed down on her chest. Sarah's heart thundered as she stumbled toward Emma's room, the familiar hallways now alien, shifting with shadows that reached for her like clawed hands. "Emma!" she called, panic lacing her voice. "I'm coming." A whisper of movement passed her, colder than the air around her, and a rush of icy dread filled her veins. She skidded to a halt, straining her ears to hear over the thudding of her heart. Another wail from Emma pierced through the silence, echoing with fear. It sent a jolt of urgency straight into her core. "Emma, sweetheart, hold on." The air felt thick and laden with menace as she sprinted down the narrow corridor, the floor creaking beneath her weight. Each step drew her closer to her daughter and deeper into a web of horror. The shadows didn't just cling to the walls, they slithered, contorting and weaving around her legs like a living entity. Suddenly, the front door banged shut with deafening force, rattling the frames of the house and sending her heart into her throat. The howling wind, once a comforting sound, now mocked her with sinister laughter. "No, no, no," she whispered, eyes darting to the shadowed corners. A sound, not footsteps, but a low, guttural growl filtered through the floorboards, crawling up her spine. Instinctively, she pressed her back against the wall, holding her breath, straining to listen. Sarah, the voice was unmistakably Greg's, distorted and fragmented. Panic surged within her as it rippled through the darkness. "Get out!" he rasped, desperation tangled in his tone. "They're not what you think." "Who?" she shouted, her voice trembling. "Who's coming for me?" "Those who feed on fear." Before he could finish, the growl escalated into a deafening roar, shaking the very foundation of the house. "Mommy!" Emma's terrified plea rang out again, slicing through the thick dread that enveloped her. It reignited Sarah's resolve. She couldn't abandon her child to whatever lurking horror awaited. Ignoring the clutching shadows, she darted down the hallway, her breath mingling with the rising terror. She flung Emma's bedroom door open, praying her daughter would be safe behind it. The room was empty, just a bed and toys scattered across the floor. The window was wide open, curtains fluttering like ghostly wings in the wind. Sarah's stomach twisted. "Emma!" she shouted, but only silence responded. Then, a soft giggle floated in from the open window, sweet and innocent. Her blood ran cold, recognizing the malevolence woven into that laughter. "Emma, please." The sound turned into whispers, echoing in her ears, a cacophony of taunts, murmuring unspeakable things. Shadows writhed under the bed, fading in and out of sight. She stepped closer, heart pounding like a war drum. "Mommy." Her child's voice emerged, but laced with a disturbing melody, reminiscent of the whispers. Desperation clawed at Sarah as she peered under the bed. Darkness, nothing but darkness, clamoring to consume her. "Emma!" She screamed, reaching beneath, but her fingers brushed against something cold, slick. A sudden pull tugged at her legs, yanking her off balance. She stumbled back, horror flooding her senses. "Help!" Emma's voice screeched, but it was distant now, echoing down a corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. With renewed fury, Sarah charged past the toys, out of the room, abandoning the darkness that clung to her heels. She could feel it. Something in the house wanted her to stay, to succumb to the shadows, but she wouldn't allow it. As she raced down the hall toward the stairs, something drew her gaze back to the basement door, slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of moonlight that flickered ominously. The thumping noise from below resumed, louder now, rhythmic like a death march. What lay behind that door? She hesitated, torn between rescuing Emma and the chilling lure of the basement. What was it that Greg was warning her about? Time was slipping away. "Stay focused, Sarah," she murmured to herself, but the darkness pressed in, insistent, like a whisper in her ear. What if trusting it was the only way to save them both? Questions without answers flooded her mind, the night seeping deeper into her very essence. The crack in that basement door beckoned her, daring her to take a step closer. What lay on the other side could save or destroy her. With every ounce of resolve, she took a breath, poised to make a choice that could spell doom or deliverance. What awaited her next? With trembling hands, Sarah pushed the basement door wider, its creaking hinges screaming in protest. The darkness poured out like a living thing, and she stepped into it, heart racing. The light from the moon flickered against the descending stairs, illuminating the damp concrete with sickly shadows. "Mommy!" Emma's voice echoed again, more desperate, more haunting. It reverberated through the damp air, twisting and distorting, making it hard to ignore the sense of urgency. "Hold on, baby!" Sarah cried, gripping the railing as she descended, each step deeper into the unknown. The basement, usually a place of forgotten boxes and old memories, shifted under her feet. It felt alive, pulsing with a quiet malevolence. As she reached the bottom, the thumping escalated into a pounding rhythm, like a heart beating in the darkness. It filled her ears, drowning out her thoughts. The air turned cold, a thick fog of terror wrapping around her. "Emma! Where are you?" "Mommy!" The voice echoed again, but this time layered with a chilling echo, an unholy chorus seemingly rising from the shadows. Pools of blackness gathered in the corners, whispering her name, slick and inviting. She stepped toward the source of the sound, between stacks of boxes that loomed like tombstones waiting to be disturbed. Each one felt like a press of clammy fingers reaching out to snatch her away. Breathing became increasingly difficult, each inhale laced with the scent of mildew and despair. "Emma!" Her shout felt feeble, swallowed by the oppressive gloom. As she moved further in, something cold brushed against her ankle, a small, damp hand. She gasped, leaping back, but there was nothing there. Just shadows and the indiscernible whispers that wrapped tightly around her mind, squeezing harder with each passing second. "Come play," the whispers hissed, taunting her. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing in time with her racing heart. "Get away from her!" Sarah screamed into the void. The tapping paused, silence hanging heavily after her accusation. She could feel eyes watching, waiting for her to falter. A sudden crash echoed behind her. Sarah whipped around, and the sight sent a rush of bile up her throat. One of the boxes had toppled, spilling its contents, a grotesque mishmash of broken toys, rotting fabric, and an old doll with blank eyes that seemed to stare directly into her soul. "Help!" The plea came again, sharper, pulling her thoughts like a string unraveling. "No!" Sarah exclaimed, her voice breaking. She couldn't linger. She forced herself to move forward, ignoring the shadows that snaked around her legs and the creeping dread that tightened like a noose. "Mommy," this time, the voice was clearer, almost nearby. Lurching forward, she stumbled through the chaos, her heart pounding, anticipation crashing down like waves against her resolve. Then she saw a faint light glowing from the far corner of the basement. It flickered like a faulty bulb, pulsing in rhythm with the echo of her daughter's voice. "Mommy! Help me!" Sarah darted toward it, ignoring the shadows stretching out to grasp her. She pushed through the weight of blackness, fear clawing at her insides. The glowing light revealed a charred figure, hunched in the corner, tangled in chains of shadows. Its eyes glinted with malice, a sardonic smile twisting its features. "Leaving so soon?" it crooned, voice dripping with mockery. "Let her go!" Sarah screamed, adrenaline surging. But the figure merely laughed, a sound like shards of ice breaking each note sharper than the last. "Come closer, Mommy. Let us play." As the darkness grinned, Sarah's heart twisted. What lay in this corrupted abyss? What else had it taken? She was ready to charge forward, will ignited by desperation, when a new scream split the air. Emma's voice, filled with terror, ripping through the suffocating gloom. "Mommy!" With one final glance at the shadowed figure, she bolted toward her daughter and the flickering light, bracing herself for whatever horror awaited her there. Would the basement reveal a path to salvation, or would it claim them both? Every breath felt like it was pulling her deeper into the dark. The choices blurred into a nightmare just waiting to unfold. The light flickered violently now, casting long, flickering shadows that danced against the walls like panicked spirits. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears, almost drowning out the haunting pleas. "Mommy! Please!" She stumbled toward the source of the light, the figure's sardonic laughter clawing at her sanity. Each step felt like trudging through thick mud, as if the basement itself was trying to drag her down, to hold her prisoner in its depths. "Emma!" she cried out, desperation wrestling with fear. The glow grew brighter, a beacon amid the suffocating blackness. It felt wrong, it felt like bait. Suddenly, the air thickened, an unnatural chill wrapping around her throat. She froze, glancing back at the charred figure, which watched her with amusement as the shadows coiled tighter around its limbs. There was a satisfaction in its eyes, a hunger. She shook her head to clear her thoughts, refocusing on the light, on Emma. "I'm coming." But her voice wavered, already unsure. Another scream erupted, piercing through her very core. "Mommy! It hurts." Panic ignited a fierce resolve. She couldn't turn back now. Not when Emma was in pain, not with every second that ticked by like a countdown to oblivion. She leaped forward, pushing against the daunting whispers wrapping around her mind. The light pulsed rhythmically, and as Sarah neared, she could see the silhouette of her daughter, small, trembling, her face streaked with tears and fear. Emma was bound by tendrils of darkness that writhed like serpents, their grip tightening with each terrified breath her daughter took. "Let her go!" Sarah yelled, lunging at the darkness. It shrieked, erupting in a cacophony of voices that filled the basement, each one taunting, laughing, echoing her deepest fears. "Mommy! I can't move!" Emma cried, her voice cracking. The light around her flickered wildly, casting grotesque shapes across the basement walls as if the very souls trapped here were trying to break free. Sarah reached for Emma, but the chains of shadow recoiled as if they had a will of their own, snapping back and forth like a vicious beast. Each time Sarah made a move, they lashed out, their cold touch cutting against her. "Closer, come play with us," the charred figure taunted, its voice slithering around her. The shadows began to emerge, forming dark shapes that clawed at the air. The basement metamorphosed into a chamber of horrors, armed with 1,000 ghostly limbs eager to ensnare her. "Mommy!" Emma's diverging scream shattered the damp air, pulling Sarah back. She could see fear twisted into her daughter's fragile features, and the urge to protect her ignited a wildfire of determination. Get away from her! Sarah shouted with a ferocity that surprised even herself. In one fluid motion, she hurled herself towards Emma. With outstretched arms, she grasped at her daughter, and everything went still. Time stretched as she felt the icy grip of the shadows resisting her. The figure howled with fury, its laughter morphing into a demonic roar. No! And then, with one mighty pull, Sarah yanked her daughter free from the clutches of darkness. The tendrils shrieked, releasing Emma in a cacophony of wails, retreating back into the gloom. The basement shook, and a deafening crash echoed as the shadows battled, dark against the brilliant light. Sarah's world flickered and frayed at the edges, yet she held her daughter tightly, newfound strength coursing through her veins. But the light began to dim, smoke curling around their feet like a trap. We need to go. Sarah shouted, her heart sinking as the light waned, giving way to a deeper, thicker darkness. Blood-curdling screams echoed from behind them, the basement heaving with anger and retaliation. They stumbled back towards the stairs, but the shadows were closing in. Was escape possible, or had they merely exchanged their fate for something even worse? As the shadows reached for them, Sarah grit her teeth, ready to confront whatever the abyss had in store. Hold on tight, Emma! She yelled as they sprinted toward the stairs, heart pounding with the terror of impending doom. But as they neared the exit, a voice slithered into her ear, soft yet sinister, leaving so soon. Little did they know, something far worse awaited them beyond the door. The moment Sarah reached for the door, a cloud of shadows lunged forward, covering the exit like a thick fog. She kicked against the ground, her heart racing, shouting, "Let us out!" The faint glow faded, consumed by the darkness that was now alive, writhing and pulsating like an angry beast. Mommy! What is happening? Emma trembled in Sarah's arms, eyes wide with terror that threatened to swallow them whole. The laughter of the dark figure echoed, a twisted mockery of their desperation. Just a little closer, it hissed, the voice dripping with malevolence. The room felt alive, the walls pulsating as if the very structure was breathing. Each heartbeat made the shadows surge, drawing closer, eager to snatch them back into the void. With a primal growl, Sarah pushed through, nearly dragging Emma against her. Keep your eyes on me, she pleaded, her voice breaking. Each footfall felt like a clash of thunder, but they wouldn't stop. The foyer loomed ahead, barely visible through the shroud of darkness. The icy fingers of shadows brushed against her skin, desperate to tug her back. Panic clawed at her throat, but she took a deep breath, channeled every ounce of love and courage, and sprinted toward the door. Emma's grip tightened around her neck, urging her on. Sarah burst into the foyer, dragging them into the suffocating darkness that suddenly repulsed them. She slammed the door behind her, chest heaving. Silence soon filled the space, only broken by their shared gasps for breath. But victory was short-lived. The walls began to pulse a rhythm that echoed the beating of her heart, the whispers surrounding them swelling dramatically, chanting their fears. You can't run from us, we'll always be here. Mommy, Emma whimpered, staring wide-eyed at the door as the shadows twisted beneath it, gnarled fingers stretching across the floor toward them. What do we do? Searching for answers that wouldn't come, Sarah glanced around, taking in the oppressive atmosphere. Each shadow seemed to mock her, urging her to despair. We need to find a way to break this, to end it. Sudden visions bombarded her mind: the basement, the darkness, the charred figure. They echoed with memories of other mothers and children lost, tales she had heard from trembling lips and fearful eyes. She couldn't let them take her daughter away too. As she grapples with her thoughts, a low growl reverberated, resonating from beneath the floor. The shadows quivered in response, and then, a hissing voice emerged from within. You should have stayed. We're hungry. Emma clutched her mother tighter, a sob echoing through the air. Mommy! No! Sarah shouted. Rage ignited in her chest, fiery and relentless. I won't let you take her. But even as she declared her fury, shadows began creeping up the walls, forming paths to every corner of the room, gaining strength. A wall of darkness, thick and unyielding, pressed in on them. "Don't be afraid, Emma. We will fight," Sarah urged, clenching her fists, praying for a way to push through. "We have each other. That's all we need." As she spoke, the shadows began to flicker, retreating slightly as if sensing the bond between them. The air buzzed with tension, their defiance vibrating like taut string. But then the growls seemed louder, angrier, shaking the foundation of their resolve. "Mommy!" Emma's voice shattered again, sharp with fear. The coldness enveloped them, harsher now, more desperate, and then they heard footsteps behind them, heavy and deliberate, dragging through the shadows. The charred figure loomed again, closer than ever, and its laughter erupted into sinister echoes. "You really thought you could escape?" The darkness thickened, pressing down like a weight, suffocating. Dread crawled in Sarah's gut as she turned, ready to face the horror head-on. And then, Emma's grip slipped just a moment, a heartbeat's worth of panic. "Don't let go!" Sarah shouted, the words a rope in tumultuous waters. But darkness had its snare ready, sinking deeper, clawing, dragging with a feral hunger. They were standing at the precipice, the abyss yawning wide. What would it reveal? Would they be consumed? And then, with the shadows swirling around her, Sarah realized something crucial. What if the darkness wasn't merely a force but something that wanted something deeper? The charred figure leaned in, whispering sweetly, "Stay, become one with us." With the shadows closing in once more, Sarah's mind raced, desperate to find the heart of this nightmare. The question lingered. The darkness ahead was one thing, but what should she become to end this madness, and could she still save Emma before it was too late? The air thickened with foreboding as Sarah's heart raced, a drum echoing in chaos. Shadows pressed in, swirling around them like a living curse, eager to ensnare both mother and daughter in its grasp. The charred figure paused, its grotesque features twisting into a cruel smile, revealing teeth that gleamed like shards of glass. "Join us, be one with your fears," it hummed, the voice resonating deep within her, stirring something primal. Sarah felt a pull, a flicker of curiosity tainted almost immediately with revulsion. But Emma, her sweet, innocent Emma, was still in her arms, trembling. "No." Sarah spit, her voice laced with defiance. "I won't let you touch her." The shadows shivered, hesitating for the briefest moment. Power surged through her veins, ignited by a fierce maternal instinct. She could feel the bond with Emma, their love acting as a bright light in the engulfing darkness. Fighting against despair, she focused, determined to push back the creeping dread. "Stay close, Emma," she shouted, squeezing her daughter tightly. Together, they inched backward, defying the shadows that clung to their feet. Suddenly, the world warped around them. Images of despair flashed through Sarah's mind, flickers of other mothers lost in shadows, consumed whole, unable to protect their children. Each vision struck like a hammer, and she felt the abyss yearning to swallow her whole. "Mommy! I see them!" Emma cried, her voice a fragile tremor. Sarah's heart sank as the girl's gaze broke from her own, filling with white-hot fear. "No! Keep looking at me!" Sarah shouted, forcing Emma's head back in her direction. "Focus on my voice, focus on us." The moment of distraction proved costly. Shadows exploded around them, shrieking their laughter, a cacophony of sinister glee echoing in the space. "Embrace it. Let go of your fears," crooned the figure, its tone shifting from hunger to a twisted allure. "You know you wanted to end your suffering to know true power." For just a flicker of time, Sarah felt that seductive call, an urge to sink, to submit, to finally rest from this relentless terror. But then Emma's grip tightened again, an anchor in the storm. "Mommy, help me." The awakening fury flooded back, fierce and relentless. "I won't let you take her." Sarah bellowed, her heart that once thudded with fear now roar with defiance. She charged at the shadows, ready to lash out, ready to fight. But as she moved, the charred figure stepped forward. "Do you really think you can resist? We are part of you now," it hissed, shadows gathering, uncoiling into eerie shapes, each one a grotesque reminder of their pain. With her back now against the wall, Sarah felt the surface vibrating, strange pulses as if it were alive. "What are you?" she demanded, the words sharper than the fear clawing at her throat. "Your darkness," the figure replied, its visage closer now, grotesque and mesmerically beautiful. "Release it. Release her." Time stretched. Silent, sharp moments passed as fear wrestled with defiance. Sarah felt reality fluctuate, her mind racing as the shadows closed in, whispering promises of chaos. "Mommy?" Emma looked at her, wide-eyed, panic-stricken. The pulse quickened. Sarah knew their escape relied on her strength, her belief in their connection. Searching the depths of her spirit, she grasped at the flicker of light inside: hope, courage, love. "We are not afraid," she cried, asserting her will against the merciless dark, and in an instant, a blinding flash erupted from within her, illuminating the shadows that recoiled in apparent agony. An unexpected window of clarity opened, but time was running thin. Would it last? What if it was only a momentary reprieve before the obliteration? "Run!" she shouted, her voice fierce against the din of chaos. Grabbing Emma's hand, they dashed toward the door, uncertainty fueling their rush. The figure recoiled further, momentarily stunned, but it wouldn't be long before it regained its terrible strength. Sarah felt the darkness pulling again, whispering promises that wrapped around her mind like chains. Will we succeed? She wondered, panic creeping in beneath her resolve. Can we truly leave this place unscathed? Gritting her teeth, she pushed ahead, heart pounding. With every step, the shadows clawed desperately at their ankles, trying to pull them back into despair. "Together," Sarah urged, pulling Emma closer. But from the depths of the darkness came a scream, primal and terrifying, shattering the statue of silence. A voice echoed from all around them, the shadows converging, hungry and relentless. What lies ahead may be far worse than the abyss behind. The dread sunk deeper, as they raced toward the door, Sarah firing every ounce of fury into her stride. The end loomed ahead, but would they make it through, or was this just the beginning of their nightmare? The door loomed larger, blurry and distorted as Sarah pushed through the clinging shadows. Every inch felt like a battle. It wasn't just the darkness that threatened to swallow them, it was the weight of her own fears, her failures, the guilt that wrapped around her heart like a snake, constricting tighter with every step they took. "Mommy!" Emma gasped, her breath coming in quick bursts. Sarah could see the flicker of panic in her daughter's eyes. But they had to keep moving. It was just ahead. They could reach the light if there was any light to be found on the other side. As they sprinted, the laughter of shadows echoed sinisterly, slithering into their minds, entwining them in twisted tales of despair. "Flee if you want," the charred figure's voice rang out, chillingly calm now. "You cannot escape what you are, what you will always be." The words stung like lashes against her skin, each spoken syllable a reminder of her fragility. But, in that moment of despair, a sudden rush of determination surged through her. She wouldn't be defined by fear. "We are not broken," Sarah shouted defiantly as they approached the door, a line drawn between dark and light, safety and terror. Just as they reached the threshold, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. It was as if the world had taken its last breath, a warning that they weren't free yet. Shadows twisted into monstrous shapes, attempting to reassert their hold. Emma squealed, her tiny voice barely rising above the haunting chorus of madness. "Hold my hand, baby," Sarah cried, tightening her grip as they stumbled forward. The door creaked and strained, barely holding against the darkness that clamored to pull them back. They burst through the entrance, stumbling onto the other side. But instead of relief, their surroundings morphed into something grotesque. A twisted landscape stretched out around them, a mirror of their own fears brought to life. Trees scratched at the sky like skeletal fingers, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. "Where are we?" Emma whimpered, staring up at Sarah with fear-soaked eyes. They stood in what appeared to be a forgotten cemetery. Graved markers jutted from the ground, partially hidden beneath weeds and ash, and the fog rolled in thick, curling around their ankles like a living thing. Nothing felt safe. The whispers that had haunted them before were back, but now they floated through the air, softer, more intimate. "You can't run from us," they called, seeping into Sarah's ears, taunting her with insecurities. "What have you done, Sarah? What have you lost?" Her past crept back, stealing the precious moment of solace. The weight of decisions long made surged within her, and she recoiled, guilt flooding her thoughts. "I want to listen," she shouted into the void. But the shadows seemed to know her secrets, deep and dark. "What brings you here? What do you seek?" "Perhaps redemption." Emma clutched her mother's waist, trembling. "Mommy, I don't want to be here." "Neither do I." Sarah spat, forcing herself to focus on her daughter's wide, fearful eyes. But doubt filtered into her heart. What if she had led them here? What if this was the end of everything? They had to move. The cemetery bore witness to their struggle, the markers of those who hadn't escaped their fears. "Let us find a way out," Sarah urged, turning from the tainted fog that reached for them. But what awaited them at the edges of this shadowy graveyard? Was it freedom or deeper despair? They had escaped one darkness, only to stumble into a more sinister trap. "Mommy, I feel it. Something's coming," Emma cried, her voice high-pitched, raw with terror. An oppressive silence followed, a space filled with impending doom. In that moment, a shadow loomed, distorting the air around them, rising from the graves like a lost soul, more sinister than before, an unrefined horror. "Your fears are not done with you yet," it rasped, and the ground trembled again, as cold as death itself. As Sarah's breath caught in her throat, she knew they had to run, but which direction was escape? "Stay close, Emma," she hissed, feeling. The darkness breathed down their necks. But in the chilling grip of the unknown, the question remained, would they ever find safety, or had they just entered a nightmare that had barely begun? The air was thick with dread as Sarah and Emma sprinted through the twisted graveyard. Each breath was labored, panic gripping their chests like iron vice. Shadows danced just beyond their periphery, skittering behind crumbling tombstones and buckled earth, drawing ever closer. "What is happening?" Emma's voice quavered, a haunting melody of childhood innocence threatened by the encroaching gloom. "We'll find a way out, baby," Sarah panted, desperation fueling her movements. Her heart raced not just from fear but from the fierce need to protect her daughter. She tightened her grip on Emma's tiny hand. "Stay with me." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the fog, grotesquely familiar yet warped. The charred monster, its smile wider than should be humanly possible, slithered closer. "You think you can escape your shadows?" it taunted, voice smooth yet jagged like shattered glass. "They're woven into your very soul." "No!" Sarah screamed defiantly. The necrotic scent of decay clawed at her lungs, but she refused to let it break her spirit. "We don't have to be afraid." But the words felt thin against the raucous laughter echoing in her ears. Shadows writhed in response, a macabre performance of chaos, each twist embodying her greatest fears: failure, isolation, the unbearable agony of loss. The cemetery, once a haunting backdrop, morphed into a reflection of her innermost turmoil, pressing down on her heart with merciless weight. And then she remembered Greg's warning, "You'll never be safe here." The truth coiled tightly around her. The darkness wasn't just a presence. It was a manifestation of everything she had tried to bury: her insecurities, her guilt, her fears. It fed off her despair. "Stay focused," she urged, pulling Emma closer. The little girl stared up at her, wide-eyed, shimmering with hope and despair alike. "Mommy, I don't want to stay here." "Neither do I," Sarah replied fiercely. "But we can fight this together." Their connection sparked in the midst of shadows, flickering with brilliant potential. She could feel it love lighting the way even in the most suffocating dark. Sarah pivoted toward a series of crooked gravestones, their inscriptions obscured by tangled vines. This way, she urged, sprinting toward an opening in the thickening mist. The laughing darkness receded momentarily, as if hesitant to pursue them into the unknown. Gripping Emma's hand tightly, they pushed through the tangled undergrowth. Each step felt lighter as the shadows hesitated, not wanting to cross the threshold. "We can do it," Sarah shouted over her shoulder. "Just keep running." And they did. The path twisted and turned, almost as if alive, guiding them. The oppressive aura of the graveyard shifted, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, hope pushed against the fear. "Look!" Emma pointed ahead, face alight with renewed vigor. A warm light flickered beyond the creeping fog, illuminating the path before them. "We're almost there," Sarah yelled, adrenaline surging as they dashed toward it, nearing the edge of the darkness. But just as they entered the light, a thunderous roar erupted from behind. The charred figure lunged, but it was too late. The light engulfed both Sarah and Emma, filling them with warmth and security. As they crossed the threshold, the echoes of the cemetery faded, replaced by soft whispers of wind rustling through leaves, a gentle call to serenity. Rubbing her eyes against the sudden brightness, Sarah found herself standing in the familiar glow of their living room. "Mommy? Is this home?" Emma whispered, looking around wide-eyed. "Yes." Relief flooded through Sarah. They were free. The shadows faded behind them, and the weight of the darkness lifted, releasing its hold. They had escaped, but the fear still dwelled within Sarah's chest, a cautionary reminder that they had battled a journey far from over. Scooping Emma into her arms, she hugged her tightly, the warmth of her daughter anchoring her spirit. "I won't let it take us again," Sarah promised, her heart steadying as she looked into Emma's trusting eyes. "We'll be stronger together." Their world had shifted. Millwood felt different now, every sound crisper, every shadow less daunting. Together, they walked toward the daylight creeping through the curtains, leaving the fading horrors behind. The distant laughter of children echoed, a reminder of joy still waiting beyond the darkness. Closing the shadows of that night, Sarah felt resolve blossom inside her. The nightmares may return, yes, but they would not face them alone. They were warriors in a shared battle, ready to confront whatever came next, and with that promise, they stepped outside into the bright dawn, ready to reclaim their lives, determined to find light even in the darkest places. Don't wait any longer to experience more epic tales like this. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that flip your world upside down. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and prove your loyalty. Flood the comments below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about today's wild journey. We want to know what you think, and instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word. Show your support and be part of the story.